What's up guys, welcome to Vintage Genetics, where it is all about classic bodybuilding. And today's going to be an awesome back day, starting out with the assisted pull-ups. And yes, they are assisted because it's a machine helping my body weight up, decreasing my body weight in order for me to be able to warm up first before going to a heavier and heavier weight. Yes, as a bodybuilder you get stronger, but also heavier, and pulling up with your own body weight right at the beginning is quite heavy. So we're doing it assisted for the optimal contraction and stretch. Let's go.
Alright, so we are starting with the assisted pull-up, which means the machine is assisting me in my body weight being pulled up. So there's a plateau beneath me pushing my body weight up, and attached to that plateau of course is a counterweight, and the first weight is very high, actually 65 kilos, helping me to reduce my body weight with just to get warmed up. But as you can see, this movement, even though you might think it's the same as a lat pull down, it still feels very different because now the body is moving up and down rather than just the arms. And that is a very big difference that allows you to change the path of motion to a more natural path where your body is automatically going to go towards the direction your lats is pulling it. And that is more natural, of course, because when you're sitting down beneath a lat pull down, depending on how you angle your body or how you sit down, you might actually not be using the lats as optimally or naturally as you possibly could with a pull-up like this. So in my opinion, when you're doing a pull-up, you should always go all the way down, but how far up should you go to still call it a rep? If you look at my arms, you should at least go, your upper arm should at least go above parallel to the ground. So as you can see, every rep I do, my upper arm exceeds parallel. And the moment that you do half reps, then you will, bring a little stimulus to the back. But for that stimulus, you also deliver a lot of fatigue to your body, systemic fatigue, which ultimately will impair recovery from the workout, which will impair muscle growth and strength gains for the next time. So that is not worth it.
As always, I recommend warming up with a pull down variation. And the pull-ups, in my opinion, especially the assisted pull-ups, is a better version of the lat pull down, because this time you're not pulling something down, you're pulling yourself up, which is a more natural movement for your arms, because your upper body is going to move in accordance to how your lats is stretching and contracting. So when you're warmed up the entire back like this, we can get started on the rowing movements for the back thickness. This movement will be the seated row with a wide grip. The wide grip will enable you to fully contract and retract the shoulder blades, allowing for more range of motion, and the true back thickness is in the true contraction. So let's get warmed up.
Next one is the wide grip seated row, one of my favorite variations. As I always say, the wide grip enables you to further retract the shoulder blades, which allows you to further contract the back muscles. So this movement is great for the upper and middle back thickness. Now the biggest difference from how I used to do this exercise and how we're doing it right now is that I'm keeping my upper body pretty much straight. I am keeping a hollow lower back, so an arched back, but I don't rock my entire upper body back and forth anymore, because first of all, you want to isolate the upper, of course you will always work the lower back, but you want to isolate the upper back as much as possible and not work those erectors as much, and you don't want to risk any injury while doing this movement anyway. If you look at Arnold Schwarzenegger or Ronnie Coleman, yes, they both did this exercise in an extreme fashion, but at least one of those examples, namely Ronnie Coleman, right now, unfortunately, is in a wheelchair because of his extreme, first of all, extreme heavy weights, but also extreme range of motion techniques and using momentum to lift the weights in some instances. However impressive it was, we do want to save ourselves from injury because then we can still keep training until a very late age, which is what we all want to do. So here, even the heaviest set is still around 10 reps. Don't go too heavy.
Okay guys, it's time for one of the best movements that doesn't use any momentum. That is the seal row. We're using the ATX cambered bar, which means it has a space. You have a barbell and you have a space like this to pull it around this bench right here to allow full contraction, because I just said rowing is all about, the back thickness is all about getting that super squeeze contraction, because if you can't, you will never develop the back thickness that you are capable of. So let's warm up first, but the weight won't be heavy regardless because no momentum at all can be used. Let's go.
Okay guys, this is the seal row, and there are two components to the seal row, as you can see. One component is having a bench that is high enough so the bar doesn't actually hit the ground. Another component is actually having a bar with an angle in the middle like this, pretty much a cambered bar, allowing you to pull the bar around the bench, because if your bench is too low and you don't have a bar like this, you cannot achieve a stretch or a contraction, and now we can achieve both. The weight you're able to use here is much lighter compared to a bent over row or a barbell row, for example, because here there is no momentum being used at all, and you are fighting gravity head on, and as in your the bar is pointing straight down as opposed to your upper body. And when you're doing a bent over row, for example, you're bending forward but not completely parallel like this, which makes it a lot more difficult. So trust me guys, if you can row this bar and put 100 kilos on it and do it 10 times, you are incredibly strong, and you really have to look at your form to make sure you're achieving that full stretch, but especially that contraction right there, because you want to be able to feel the squeeze to create that back thickness.
Next movement will be a chest supported one, kind of like the seal row, but this time it's going to be a cable movement. So it's not going to be gravity, but the resistance of a weight attached to a cable. Yes, it's also gravity, but this time the direction of force has changed from to the bottom to the front. So you're actually going to be seating, rowing to the max, contracting the back to the max, and also stretching without having to impact your lower back, because this is going to be a chest support. So let's do this.
Alright, so this is another amazing movement. I like to call it the chest supported rope row. And this basically is comparable to like a low row on the hammer strength machine or any other, particular chest supported back rowing machine that a lot of gyms have. They take up a lot of space, and you can only do one singular movement on those machines, which in this gym would be a waste of space. So instead of that, we like to use multifunctional equipment like a bench and a cable station, which you can do an incredibly amount of exercises with, such as this one, the chest supported rope row. So what you want to do is you put a bench pretty much, on a seated regular position like this, and then face the bench with your chest, of course, to make it chest supported, and then make sure the bench is far enough from the cable attachment so you're able to achieve a full stretch, and use a cable and a rope that is long enough to able to wrap around the bench for a full contraction. Now, what is very important here is you have to feel that incredible contraction, and in this case it's again just like the wide grip seated row in the lower, middle and upper back thickness, but mostly the middle and lower back thickness. And it just feels incredible for creating the thickness there when you're doing a lat spread, for example. Instead of having a shallow back, you want a deep, thick back, and also the lower back muscle insertions. And by the way, you can't see it here, but Behind this bench, there's actually a 40 kilo dumbbell keeping the bench in place, because you can imagine that it's quite a heavy load trying to pull the bench forward as well. So keep that in mind.
Last one for the back is going to be the cable pullovers. So we're using the exact same attachment, but this time we're going to do the pullover exercise and isolation movement to really contract the lower lats. And for me personally, I want the lower lats to be very thick, so they look from the front to appear to attach a little lower. Obviously, the attachment point of your muscles is unchanged, but if you get it thicker near the bottom, it'll look like you have more muscle and lower insertions, because bodybuilding is all about illusion, guys. So this one is always going to be a staple in my exercise selection. The previous time I did a cable version, the bar version, and now we're going to do the rope version. And the rope version allows you to contract the back a bit more intense. So let's do this.
Okay, so this is the cable pullover. As I always say, you have two variations here. Either with this rope, which is the exact same rope we used for the previous exercise, or a straight bar. Now with the straight bar, I'm able to get a slightly better stretch. And with the cable, I can get a better contraction. But for me, I like to alternate between the different types of pullovers. So one time I like to go for the ultimate contraction, which is right here, to get that lower lat thickness going on. But sometimes with a very good pump, it's very nice to use the barbell, the bar, to be able to stretch those lats out as well.
Next one will be the first bicep movement, the ATX Bicep Curl. So this actually mimics a bicep machine, which you would see in most commercial gyms. However, this attachment is literally attached to a bench, which you can use for regular movements like the dumbbell press and stuff like that. But this you can, remove and put somewhere else. So that is the versatility of the ATX brand, which is why we got it for this space, as this gym doesn't have the broadest space. But that's why you need very good multifunctional equipment like this one, especially now with the lockdown. People need good equipment at home. This is specifically designed for garage gyms, for example, but also very high quality standards for a gym like this. So let's get started on this movement.
Now this is another one of those great ATX machines, actually attachments. You can see I'm sitting here on the bench, and this bicep curl is literally attached to this bench, and you can remove it as well and store it somewhere else. You can also attach a fly machine to this to be able to do flies and also leg extensions or ab crunches, for example. So this is also another one of those multifunctional pieces of equipment in this gym. But this is great for another variation of the bicep curl. We all know the dumbbell curl or the barbell curl or the preacher curl or the regular cable curl. But it's always nice to have different variations in fun muscles to train, like the biceps. We all love a good bicep machine, and this one feels just like any of those enormous bicep machines in a lot of gyms, which again takes up quite a lot of space, and this does the exact same thing. And only 10 kilos aside here already feels quite heavy, so there is no way you're able to fill up those bars entirely with weights and still be able to do a normal, regular bicep curl set here. So what I like to do with bicep curls is stick to higher reps, at least 12 reps, but preferably around 15 reps, to be able to get, first of all, a very good mind-muscle connection in the biceps, a very good pump, but also simply get a lot of blood in there, because the more blood you can drive into a small muscle group, the bigger it'll eventually become, and the less risk of injury that you have, guys. All the small muscle groups in the body, the heavier you go, the more likely you are to injure that muscle, and not just the muscle but also the tendon or the joint. Something in that area other than the muscle might also get hurt. So using a lighter weight with perfect form and more volume will work wonders to make those muscles grow.
The final movement of the day is going to be the alternate dumbbell curl. So one arm first, then the other alternating the curls. Now this doesn't have a lot of tension at the bottom, but the contraction here is amazing. Plus what you also train is a supination of the wrist, which is also a function of the bicep. So if you never do the twisting bicep curls, you never train that function, which would be a lacking bicep, because you want a maximum amount of size in the biceps, which this will definitely attribute to it. So let's get started.
Last exercise, and this is quite an easy one we all know, the alternating dumbbell curls. As Arnold used to say, he feels the contraction in this exercise the best out of any other bicep movement. And we all know how big his biceps were, so we might just as well give this one a shot. And yes, because it's on, you turn your wrist outwards as you go upwards, you can actually work the supination part of the bicep, but also just the contraction and peak part as well, which really helps develop a full bicep instead of just either a peaky bicep or a wide bicep. You want to create both, and this movement, stimulates both of those muscles, namely the bicep muscles we all can see right there when you're doing a frontal bicep, but also the brachialis part of the biceps, which runs under the biceps, in between the triceps and the biceps as well, which will make your arm look wider and thicker from the front instead of just having a peaky bicep, which the combination is the best of both worlds.
Back and biceps are finished. One of my favorite routines, because the back and the biceps both never can be big enough. It's always going to be an awesome sight to have a great thick and V-tapered back on stage and bigger biceps. I need this to, create the illusion, but also the physical body of being bigger on stage than the rest. And accompany with a classic physique on stage, obviously, because classic physique is all about creating the perfect appearance on stage, which I'm going to be working on the entire year. Alright guys, thank you a whole lot for watching. Check out vintagegenetics.com for all this clothing I was wearing today. I want to thank you again for watching, and don't forget to stay golden.